what I do in my practice is we do a case review for the first 2 sessions. And in that case review, we go into a deep treatment plan on touching base with all of those different aspects to build out a foundation. And then after those first 2 sessions, and even in those first 2 sessions, we're beginning to work on different things and bringing in perception as medicine and talking about the different choices that we can switch out and shift. But I find that after those 2 sessions are really built for having like the corners of the puzzle board, just having a framework to begin to then go exploring and working through. And then from that space, I find we really get to do the deeper work where we're tailoring the treatment plan, but also really working on what's coming up for that individual person, bringing it to the light of day and reworking it and working with it in real time.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to the show. This is Orion. Thank you so much for being here. You are in for a treat. I have with me my friend and a very fantastic doctor, Dr. Brooke Stuart. She's the founder and active president of Let Go and Grow International and a holistic doctor in private practice, where she specializes in taking a holistic approach to mental health and high performance as she assists her patients in unlocking their own intrinsic ability to heal. In this episode, we talked about the energetics of people pleasing and how it can take away your life force. What is holistic medicine? How do you look at anthropology and medicine, and how can it affect your life in finding new modalities and new practitioners? Because there is so much more out there that can assist your health. We talked about supplements, flower remedies, releasing stress, gut health, your emotions, how they are connected, and more and more and more. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hey, Dr. Brooke, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Orion, for having me.
Before we begin, can you share a little bit about your origin story? How did you discover your passion, and how did you become the incredible doctor that you are today?
Thank you so much. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a holistic doctor in private practice, but I got here through very much many of my own health struggles, growth struggles growing up, really not having answers to a lot of the health problems that plagued me. I had acne, allergies. I struggled with anxiety that I don't think I realized was anxiety at the time, different sort of things going on, feeling scattered and shattered at home, but also health wise. I remember going to probably like 16 or 17 different doctors for my acne alone. And so it really pushed me to look for different kinds of solutions. And I remember, so I played golf at University of Miami, actually. And I remember being in my sophomore year and just feeling like I'm in the business school. I would like to start my own business at some point, but I'm in the business school and I'm playing golf and I am not doing well. I'm exhausted, fatigued, completely burned out. And I remember coming in last in a golf tournament. And this is obviously, we could get into different things too, but I remember this moment where I came in last in a golf tournament and my dad was on the phone with me and he said, Brooke, like if you want to actually play your junior and senior year, you're really going to need to step it up a notch. And I thought to myself, like, do I want to step it up a notch in this field? And I remember for the first time recognizing I had a choice. And the answer was such a clear no, where usually my autopilot answer would have been like, yes, I'm going to wake up earlier. I'm going to go to sleep later. I'm going to work harder. But the answer was just like a very simple no. And the no felt like freedom. And I feel like saying no and in that moment was like saying a yes, a huge yes to so many other aspects of my life that were undiscovered or kind of laying dormant, things that if I look back as a child, I was really passionate about. For example, I was like the president of my class in middle school and then also my sophomore year of high school. And those things really lit me up. But in my family of origin, those things were looked at as like, okay, but it's really not useful. It's really not going to get you anywhere. And meanwhile, certain feelings of rejection, I would just kind of like shove in and then work harder at the things that you would obviously receive more praise and more love for. And by no means do I blame my parents for anything, but it was truly very much like looking back, seeing all of the ways that I was suppressing myself and all of the ways that I was disconnecting from who I really am. And when I actually came in last in that tournament, it was like this perfect choice where my body felt so exhausted. It was such a clear no, but that yes was so exciting to me at the same time. And I didn't really know where everything would lead, but I just knew that saying no to this and yes to this was so important. And I remember having taken enough classes at University of Miami where I was already majoring in psychology, but I didn't know it. And I didn't even know it and have awareness around that. And then I found out about anthropology and thought that was really interesting. And I ran into a medical anthropology class and started to try all of these different nutritional shifts and these mindset shifts in the psychology class. And literally one thing after another kept stacking. And they were just such simple holistic interventions. And everything I had heard about the holistic world kind of at the time seemed complicated or from 0 to 100. And as you know, like there are so many things on this never ending list of holistic things to do that I love and I have and I use all of the time. But at that point in time, a foundation is what I was craving. Like, how do I have stability with my mindset, diet, lifestyle? So one thing after another led to acupuncture school, and I got off one medication after another through many, many kind of like weird stories. But all of that to say, that's what's brought me into practice. And I absolutely feel so blessed to get to do what I do every single day. It's almost like I get to learn alongside my patients, but also be a guide and at the same time simultaneously. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you said that no felt like freedom. Do you think you were a people pleaser, or you wanted to please your parents and you lived someone else's life?
Oh, I am still working on my people pleasing issues. I feel like and and we probably see it similarly in terms of like, I always think about the authentic self and how do we keep coming home to authentic self and what parts of us are in these protective modes and are utilized and sent out to kind of like protect the system. And so that's been a lot of the deep work that I've been doing is really paying attention to what parts of me are people pleasing, and then what do I want, what actually feels like me, and beginning to get clearer and clearer on what those two aspects are. And it's interesting, whenever I'm in that people pleasing mode now, I feel so disconnected, so dissociated. It's almost like this anxiety like rushes in because I'm running on autopilot and I feel this lack of connection to self. And I tell my patients, and I literally use the same exact tools. When you're in those moments, it's really hard to click back in. And obviously, the better and more aware, the easier it is to access that clicking back in. But at the same time, it's like in in the wake of those experiences, when you choose to come back in and learn from those experiences, it not only prevents it, so you're being proactive in that way, but you also can learn so much in those moments of reflection. So kind of like reflecting back on my life, 100%. I was a people pleaser, but I was equally this kind of like rebel figure in my house too. But people pleasing was definitely part of trying to be a peacemaker at the same time.
Yes. I went to a high level mastermind in Arizona last weekend, and I felt like on the second day, I felt so overwhelmed. All of a sudden, everything got intensified. The people's, like the volume of the room went from 10 to 100, and the colors and everything was so all of a sudden so overwhelming, and it felt sensitive and almost like I was in tears. I was like, what is going on? And I spoke with one of my coaches about it, and she said there is this looking outside and looking inside, and sometimes when we are too busy with what's going on inside, we can get lost. And so we look outside. Let's say we're in this conference situation, we look outside to maybe help people get business connections, find interesting people, and that takes us out of our own thoughts. But the way to look inside is to listen. Like if I we actually made a conference plan where when you're going to a conference, what's your intention? And she said that the brain, he said sometimes you can have maybe too much fluorescent light. And I'm a sensitive person, I'm an empath. So, fluorescent light, or maybe dehydration, drop in blood sugar, actually physical things, stress about what's going on in Israel, that played a lot into that. Um, and and instead of just like being like in almost like in limbo with my own mind and getting so overwhelmed, like go outside and because everything we need is within us now, right? Everything I need is within me now. So go outside, get some sun, get out of the fluorescent light, take maybe like box breathing, 4 4 4, drink some water, connect, have a little snack, and then I can go back and feel much better. Because sometimes it's I go back when I have those symptoms, I go back to my small story of like, I'm not good enough. People here are more successful than me. I'm behind. I haven't achieved enough. I'm unseen. It's all a very interesting story, but it's just a story. And when I just go back from all this like in my head into just being in my body and taking care of myself, listening to this, to what's going on actually, and doing some self care, I can handle the outside world much better. And it starts with intention. And I love your story where you actually took the moment to be like, actually, I need to take care of myself. I need to shift. I need to do things for myself right now. Right.
It was the I love what you just said about that balance of like being in your body, being aware of the mind, like noticing like there's definitely something about that balance that is so characteristic of being obviously in the present moment. And I think it's super interesting too, like the places that we can go when we're not in the present moment, and how when we opt into, for example, like a people pleasing mode. I've been thinking about this a lot actually, about how it's such a deep form of self abandonment that we're so often not aware of. But in that moment where I was like, you know what? It's actually a no that I cannot deny. I feel so this feels so clear. It was, it was a moment in my life where I hadn't had connection with myself and probably like traces, it's not like our self leaves us, it's always there. But it just felt like I actually said yes and actually listened for the first time. And it's been there, but there was just so much blocking it. And I think sometimes what I think about a lot with health is the healthier that we are. And obviously, I think a lot about health and growth and health and growth, and how if we're growing, we're healthier. If we're healthier, we're growing. And if we're intentional about that, it's a lot easier to experience it. But with health, I find it so interesting because the healthier we are, the less noise that we have, and the easier it is to access ourselves. And that's one of the things I find. I think a lot of times, especially in the health world, personal growth world, we're just like working on getting healthy, but it can be in a way an avoidance of self because we're focusing so much on being healthy that we're not letting it be a reciprocal relationship in terms of actually energizing us to take command and to actually direct our choices to create what we want to create in alignment with who we are. So I think that that's it's so interesting how it all works together, but that connection being so pivotal of just connecting and coming back to the present moment through those simple exercises like sunshine and box breathing and all of that.
Right. Right. A lot of the time we are so much into self-development, and we have that idea of like, how can I be in service for people? How can I help? But it can be people pleasing in disguise. Right. I want to help you. I want to help you. I want to help you because if I'm going to stop and look at myself, I might not feel good. So it's when we are strong in our essence, and who we are, we help people from a different place that is actually more helpful. We never help people when we are really trying to please them, because we never know what pleases them. If we play small, does that please somebody? We never know. Probably not true. So when we are just strong in our essence and in our energy, in our vitality, in our health, that's where we can serve more. And that's where we can serve from a higher place, because we actually care about that person and we're not too much in our own heads of how can I please that person. It's more like the intention of how can I help that person? How can I be more connected with guide and get the right answers to be there with that person? Right?
Oh, I love that because I think, and certainly in my household growing up, but doing was so much more important than being. So all of the focus on doing, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, how are you know, versus like being, like how, and of course, you know, if we're being, it doesn't mean we're not doing things and choosing choices actively, but there's something about being and actually being able to be with experiences that actually holds that aspect of being, just has that innate transformative power, that if we bring that to like the choices that we make, it has such a different vibration. And so not always it being about what we're doing, but how we're doing it and where we're doing it from, and even being intentional about that. And I think a lot of times that it's easy to fixate on that. But if we just use our intention to guide, even if we're not totally physiologically like synced up with that intention, we'll get there. It's almost like a, I don't like the quote fake it till you make it, but I love looking at beginnings of things as rites of passages where you're not all synced up, you're not all integrated. It is uncomfortable, and it's almost like this aspect of coming into yourself through the choice as well, to be intentional and then to have that choice companion commitment to serve as you're working on yourself, knowing that that creates waves in the work that you're doing with others as well. So I love what you're saying.
Yeah. And you met my son because we were having
Yeah.
having dinner together. And I have to tell you that, like, being a mom for me was the biggest self growth I've ever had in my life. Like, I jumped. It's like quantum leaps. Because in order for me to raise a decent human, I need to take care of myself on so many levels. And I did have postpartum depression that I had to work on, get myself out of it. And I know that when I'm really good to myself, I'm the best for my son and my husband and everybody around me. It's such a simple truth, and I keep forgetting it. The frick! Like years of self development, I keep forgetting those basic things. What's going on? Why is it like that?
You know, I think it's so interesting that you say that, because I think we're almost like built to forget to remember, and then when we actually remember, like bringing that into action is the key there. I think that reminders can be so helpful. That's one of the, I mean, this is definitely a personal gain from working with people, but I feel like being with my patients is such a reminder. Like, hey, look, like you cannot be telling someone one thing and doing another. So let's make sure we are in alignment and actually making the choices that we're proud of. And I am not a mother yet. I hope to be one day, but I think that I can't even imagine the amount of growth that zero, like those quantum leaps from growing a little human, but being around a little human and watching that little human watch everything that you do. And you can't fool that little human because energetically they pick up on absolutely everything. So I cannot even imagine the amount of growth that could take place there. But the only thing I can relate it to is the experiences I hear about from these incredible mothers that I work with, and also just the thinking about when I'm around people, it's there's something about who you surround yourself and the work that you're up to with different people that just puts you in a different kind of posture. Like, I have to be the best version of myself to be around these people. Like, I have to be. Otherwise, there is going to be all of these sort of like crevices of insecurity that I always tell my boyfriend, I'm like, I literally this is probably an issue that I should work through, but I literally try my best at almost everything I do to such a degree. And this is definitely issue based too, fear based too. But one of the reasons why I actually do that motivation being like fear and pain, and for me, anxiety, it's kind of like shifting that into like, okay, I'm actually doing this so I can grow. So I actually can do it from a loved based place of self discovery, and both exist. Like, I'm definitely, like, I can imagine as a mother, like, I'm doing this because I don't want my little human to grow up into the worst version of me, but equally I'm doing this out of complete love for myself and this little human, and to be able to be with both parts and know that they both belong, but we can choose where we come from, and the intention that we set in motion, I think is so interesting, such an interesting part of being human.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's very multi-layered, and it's very awesome. And did you go to Dr. Don Wood's facility since we met?
I have not, but it's on my list of things to do. I feel like that is I had no idea that was in Orlando, and I'm so glad you guys brought my attention to that, because what a cool facility. I would love to learn more about what he does.
Yeah, so Dr. Don Wood, who was on this show, has this amazing facility in Orlando. Wow, his office is beautiful, and they have a virtual flotation tank, and they have red light therapy and other therapies that he does that. And now he just opened that area for the public to come and experiment with some of the technologies, which is really cool. I still live in Santa Monica, and the bulletproof lab was just down the street from me. And I experimented with some of those technologies when they were, like a decade ago, when they just, were like very, very new. And I was so happy to know that it's close by, and I don't know, kind of, well, it's 3 hours from me, but still, close enough that I can go down there for a few days and experiment with some of those things, and work with him is amazing. So yeah, I mean, like, try it.
Out of curiosity, which device do you find like most beneficial for you?
Well, hyperbaric chamber is incredible for the cells and for brain health, and especially for cancer patients, because cancer cannot live where oxygen is. So hyperbaric is incredible for everybody. I don't think any of us gets enough oxygen, but it's not as fun as the virtual flotation tank, which gets you into the theta brain waves in less than 3 minutes. And it's interesting because as I evolved as a person, my experience of the virtual flotation tank is completely different. Where in the past it would just put me in a calm theta state, and now it's like almost like journeys that I go through. It's pretty intense. It's awesome.
That is
It is awesome. I want to go back to you, and as a holistic doctor, what's your definition for yourself, being a holistic doctor?
So I always think that, and obviously every holistic doctor is so different in their approach. And I always really focus on foundational basics like mindset, diet, lifestyle, supplements, therapeutic devices, choices that people can make each and every day for themselves. So what I do in my practice is we do a case review for the first 2 sessions. And in that case review, we go into a deep treatment plan on touching base with all of those different aspects to build out a foundation. And then after those first 2 sessions, and even in those first 2 sessions, we're beginning to work on different things and bringing in perception as medicine and talking about the different choices that we can switch out and shift. But I find that after those 2 sessions are really built for having like the corners of the puzzle board, just having a framework to begin to then go exploring and working through. And then from that space, I find we really get to do the deeper work where we're tailoring the treatment plan, but also really working on what's coming up for that individual person, bringing it to the light of day and reworking it and working with it in real time. And I'll typically ground it with a certain practice after, whether it's as simple as placing your hands over your heart, feeling yourself breathing, feeling your
I
heartbeat,
would
or
I
it's
would like
something.
it's really good. Our hands are like we have healing energy in our hands, and we can heal ourselves. Do you find did you see a lot of spontaneous remissions of people like when they just worked on themselves and then something shifted?
All of the time, all of the time. I feel so blessed to be in the field that I'm in because I talk to different people and I'm like, I think one of the reasons why a lot of conventional doctors they'll say, you know what, this isn't going to change. Like this scar in your eye is only going to get worse. The nodule in your thyroid is only going to grow. You know, you need to attack the body and to do these things to alleviate certain aspects of pain. And obviously, that's not the energy in which they're always going about it. But I think it's a lot of times based on what they've seen. So they want to create and paint a realistic picture to really help people, to really recognize like if they aren't changing their lifestyle choices, if they're not changing their mindset and their diet, well, then most likely it is only going to get worse. And so in my practice, I'm lucky because I'm working with people who are highly open to and aware that they can change, and then they're actually changing. So when we shift out the raw materials and we shift the body from like a regressive state where it's going towards disease pathology into one that's healing and actually a health-based space, if you're looking at a spectrum for shifting into a health-based state, it could be like disease pathology could be like we're at 48%, but the car's still going in reverse. So if we get the car into 52% through a couple of changes, well, now we're really changing things and the momentum picks up and now we're at 64% and 78. And so much can change in the blink of an eye. But also little funny things will happen. I'll give you a personal example. At the beginning of this year, actually for like the last like 4 to 5 months, I was struggling with allergies every morning. I just moved into a new house. I'm in a relationship that started at the beginning of this year and we just moved in together. So in my mind, it's like, and then
With a very charming guy, if I might say so myself. You guys are so cute
thank
together.
you. You guys almost share a name. But but yes, so I'm in a relationship and we just moved in together and he has this adorable little like schnauzer mix puppy. And so I'm sitting over here thinking that my allergies are from the bad house and I might be allergic to Lady, which I was never allergic to dogs before. And his house is beautiful. There is nothing to be allergic to in sight. I've cleaned, I've bought air filters, all of these different things. And then I went over, then Thanksgiving hit and I have a little brother and he looks at my eyes and he goes, what's that color around your eyes? And I said, like the eye doctor basically just prescribed me blue light lenses about 4 to 5 months ago. And I've been using them. And he goes, you can tell that there's like a weird jaundicey color around your eye. And so immediately I'm like, I have clear samples. I'm taking them out right now. So I go over Thanksgiving weekend, Thanksgiving break, and I spent the night at my mom's house for a couple of days and I didn't have the allergies, but I'm wearing these clear contacts. Come to find out the blue light lenses I was completely allergic to them. And so it was so interesting. I feel like I need to, and I looked all over Reddit, all over the internet, and I didn't see any of these similar complaints. But what's so amazing is we're not ready to know until we know, because throughout that period of time, I had difficult conversations with Ryan. I had to be embarrassed about my health. Like I was like sneezing all over the place. Like we got air filters and got kind of like into a rhythm with different things. And so it was, I feel like in a weird way, I don't think I've gotten to the point of gratitude for these blue light lenses yet, but it's so interesting that when it's the right time. We just figure it out. And since I got rid of the blue light lenses, I've had zero allergies, zero issues, and my eyes feel stronger and my energy is so much better. But if I look back in that first day I put them in, I could feel, I know, I viscerally felt the weakness in my body when I put them in. And it's just, I just recently, I've been getting all of these reminders of just like, you have to slow down to pay attention, even if there isn't the research to support what works for you or what doesn't. You absolutely need to slow down and trust yourself and your body more than ever before. And this was just one of those perfect examples I will never forget because it was so ridiculous.
As a person that is not a doctor, we are being taught to listen to doctors as if they were like they're such figures of authorities. So if a doctor tells you that those blue lenses are amazing for you, you will override your own intuition and you'll just listen to it, even though you are a doctor yourself, right? It's so interesting.
Yep. And it actually, if I think back about the energetics of that specific session with that specific doctor, it goes even deeper because she had a little like intern in the room. And she actually, one of the examples I gave in this podcast was from that session. I had this little mark in my eye that I've never had before. And she said, "Oh, yeah, that's only going to get worse." And I thought to myself, that's absolutely not true because I can think of like 12 different things I can do to bring about increased eye health. And I remember at the end of that session, she was prescribed the blue light because she thought that they would be a great fit, and she was really, like focused on these blue light things. And I asked to make sure the prescription had a clear lens as well. And she said, "No, these should work, but if you have an issue, let me know." And it was so interesting because I thought to myself, well, if I have an issue, I'll just let her know, but I'll try these out. And all of this stuff actually has come out like since, just in general. But I thought to myself, there were so many signals and signs of clarity because I always like teach my patients, and I always think about for myself. I didn't grow up in a home that praised doctors. Like my dad works with doctors. He's in finance. He finances medical equipment for all of these hospitals around the country. And my mom actually really, she suffered with interstitial cystitis starting at the age of 27, and they literally had to have a bathroom in their car. She struggled so deeply with this, and she actually came up with, and this is before it was more rampant. Now there's a lot more issues with interstitial cystitis, and there's a lot more awareness around it. But she actually came up with her own solution. And I had heard this story my whole life of like, my mom came up with her own solution. My dad works with doctors. I never put them on a pedestal, but it's interesting to see. So when I'm working with people, I really talk to them about, you have to feel comfortable with who you're working with. Like, you have to be able to have open conversations and discussions. And sometimes, I mean, in complete transparency, of course, you're going in there to get something specific, or you just want to kind of like check the box on something specific. But ideally, if you're really working with someone and if you're trying to find the best person for you, you want to be in an environment where you can take a deep breath, exhale, ask the questions you need to ask, and really get to the root of what's going on. So it's interesting.
Yes, from my experience, what I feel is that when I end up going to a doctor and I'm in a place of, oh my God, I need a solution right now, um, I I get to a place of more of despair, not despair, but oh, I really, really have to have this solution. Give it to me now. Then I'm not in my body and I'm not in my intuition, and I just want to get the solution, and I'll just take it because this is the doctor said so, even though I know better. Sometimes I had a few times in my life where I did that, even though I know better. It comes from a place of scarcity compared to a place of abundance where, okay, I'm here with that person. He might or might not give me the right solution, and the solution is out there for me. I can be patient. I don't have to get it right here, right now. I can give myself the time to go and look for other opinions and sleep on it instead of just taking it because the doctor said so. And I feel like even though you didn't live in a house where doctors were so praised, somehow it's a part of our collective consciousness. It's subconscious. Even watching movies with doctors, and we're like, "Oh, doctor, tell me what to do." And we're a 5-year old, and we see that movie, and it's somewhere deep in our subconscious mind. The doctor is the answer. The doctor is the answer. No, the right doctor is the answer.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you said that because it is so deeply embedded in our culture. And that's what blew my mind when I was in this medical anthropology class. I was learning about medicine from all around the world.
What is medical?
Oh my gosh, you would love it. So, anthropology, it has four fields within it. So, it's linguistics, physical, archaeological, and cultural. And now there are all these other fields. There's psychological anthropology and medical anthropology, but it's really the observation and the study of culture and of people. And so, the way an anthropologist may look at like Christmas or Thanksgiving would be in complete observation. So, it's like, okay, there are five people. Three are X, the other are Y. They are eating with these utensils. Like it's a literal observation, and they document what they see in it as objective a way as they possibly can. And I actually loved it because I was so used to filling in the gaps in the storylines and narrating it. Like, I bet they're eating this with this fork because it's easier than chopsticks. Like, that was how my mind worked. It was just like always filling in everything. And anthropology gets you to take a step back and to really observe objectively. And so it's such an interesting field. I love what they do and how they detail cultures, and specifically with the medical aspect. It's so interesting because in that medical anthropology class, I had the most skeptical professor of all time. And his name was Robert Halberstein, and he was so skeptical, but he would bring in all of these practitioners, and so my eyes were just open to this world. And he brought in like a flower remedies lady, he brought in Chinese medicine, he brought in Ayurvedic practitioners, and I would try these things, and they were working. And growing up, when I went to the doctor, I thought to myself, I would never be a doctor. Like, I don't want to be in a white coat. I don't want to be in a cold building. I don't want to make people wait. I don't want to just like not understand their story and be able to dig in. Like, it was just never something that was interesting to me. But then when I started to learn how other people do medicine, I'm like, well, this is highly engaging, highly interesting. I love this. So,
That's amazing. Uh, did you find some natural remedies that really surprised you or shocked you?
oh my gosh. I think some of the realizations in that were how actually one of the biggest realizations for me was how side effects are direct effects, and how if I'm taking something and I let it go, there's potential that I actually get healthier just by beginning to let certain things go. So that was a big realization for me, just finding out the things that were not a match for my system and that were creating a form of hysteria. But then also 100%, I love Bach flower remedies and flower remedies of all kinds, but I found that Rescue Remedy has such a special place in my heart because of that class, really, but also because it was a very immediate experience that I had, like with that in class, going home into a situation. I was having issues with my roommate at the time, and so I felt like I was walking on eggshells walking into my apartment, but I just didn't feel that way. And Rescue Remedy, for anyone who doesn't know, it's on my desk. It's well known as being like this in this little yellow box, but it has 5 flower remedies in it that work on shock, that help you to get present, that addresses intense stress and fear. And this little flower remedy lady said, does anybody want to try this? It will help bring about more of a fearlessness, and it will also help you in terms of exam time and different things. And I said, absolutely, I'll try it. This sounds fun. So a person in my, Nikki, a girl in my class, and I were sipping on this every 2 minutes, like she advised. And we looked at each other.
Every 2 minutes?
There are multiple ways to take it. So one way that you can take it is to take 4 drops 4 times a day. Another way that you could take it would be to put 16 drops in a bottle of water and sip it every 2 minutes until you forget about it. And that would be for a more intense period of time. What I do now is I actually make personal remedies for myself. I put the rescue remedy in as a base, and then I layer it with other specific issues that I'm working on. And I put 8 drops of this into my water, and I sip it throughout the day. So I'm having exposure to kind of like working with that emotional release. And the way I describe like flower remedies is that a lot of the vitamins that I recommend and advise have to do with physiology. So, for example, L-theanine is really beautiful at helping the body to exhale, to take a deep breath, to grow the capacity to handle stress because it creates more coherence intrinsically. But that's more physiological in nature. Whereas flower remedies work with more of the emotional. And of course, both work with mental, because if you know why you're taking it, then you know that you have that intention as to like why you are taking it. But with that said, I found flower essences to be a perfect piece of the healing puzzle when it comes to working with the emotions that then of course trickles in to that building that mental kind of resilience and bringing in and accepting new thoughts that are more in alignment with who you are. And then also obviously the body gets the trickle effect of that too. Whereas if you're working with the body and different imbalances or different things that could be helpful, of course, the emotional aspect, the way we work with emotions changes, but then also we know why we're taking it. So that's highly helpful with the mental aspect too.
Thank you. What about the gut? How does that affect our mindset?
That is a great question. It's obviously there is such an incredible, not obviously, it's not obvious at all, actually. But if anybody thinks about a time that they felt super anxious or super frustrated, a lot of times they'll think about different GI experiences. Like, for example, if I'm feeling angry and frustrated and depressed and stiff and kind of closed off and shut down, honestly, like you may like on a big level, like constipation would be more associated with that. Whereas if you're having more loose stools and anxiety and things are just going through you and there's all of this nervous tension, a lot of times we'll notice these patterns within ourselves. I work with a ton of professional athletes, and a lot of times before different high performance events, like they literally like have to use the restroom. And so it works hand in hand, but the way, and of course, when we support our gut health, it helps with our mental health. It helps to kind of create that balanced calm in the body. Whereas when we're working with the mental, emotional, more psycho-spiritual side of things, it can definitely send that signal of safety to the body as well. So I kind of see it as like this figure eight.
And how do we support our gut health? What do we need to take?
I love that. So I always think of a couple of things. One is what we are eating. What are we putting into our bodies? And I really focus on primarily if I'm just kind of giving basics. Everybody's different, but I recommend eating whole unprocessed foods and looking at the elimination of gluten and dairy and seeing what it's like to live life without it while eating those whole foods. And then from that space, if you are interested in bringing it in one by one by one. And I find some people do better on a more plant-based diet. Some people do better on a more high protein, high fat diet. And a lot of people are in between. So I definitely look at that first. And then from that space, a really good digestive enzyme can be extraordinarily helpful. Working with stress management tactics, even if it's in supplement form, like an L-theanine, can be really helpful, because a lot of times people nowadays are experiencing food trauma. There's so much trauma that we associate with food, whether there are so many, and obviously eating disorders would be the first thing to kind of like pull out and talk about there. But anything we can do to support gut health and to make that a more harmonious experience where we're taking in our food and utilizing the nutrients is helpful. And then there are, of course, things like collagen powder that can help to seal the gut lining and support the immune system. And then there are many other things that we can do. But I would say those are the first 3 things that I typically look at and think about before getting into everything else. And of course, probiotics can be a part of that, but you can also source that from diet.
Yeah, you spoke about gluten elimination, which I have I have a relationship with, because I'm like, I'm gluten free, but this is so yummy. Let me just try it. I don't have a very, very strong reaction to gluten, just like a little bit of tummy irritation and bloating, which I don't like. But sometimes, man, like I like baking sometimes. Like I like baking challah bread. So good. And is it true that it doesn't matter if you eat a lot of gluten or a little bit of gluten, it is still in your system and can affect you just as much?
I would say this. So I have never, except for the aspects of joy and kind of like wanting to indulge or have something that you love, I have never seen gluten or and I'm very careful about saying dairy because I know when you break it down and look at all the components, in my practice, I've very rarely seen gluten or dairy be beneficial to my patients and their health. I've very rarely seen it be beneficial. And I would say I really cannot even recall a case where it's been highly beneficial other than the mental health aspect of basically feeling freedom and unrestricted around food. But I also think that for a lot of people, it is neutral and it might have a slight irritant and irritation in the body. And in that case, I would say just know what you know about yourself. There's no need to eliminate it completely if you don't want to, or if there's not like a motivation or an intrinsic desire to do that. So I think it's all about like how it impacts you in general and what you choose to do with it, what you want to do with it. I always think about for myself. So for me, like knowing that I have issues with gluten and dairy is such a great gift to my life because when I eliminate it, I feel fine. I feel great physically. And when I eat it, I'm immediately having issues, acne, anxiety, all kinds of things come up for me. And so to me, it feels like freedom to know that that I have issues with it and that I can eat everything else and still be social and have brunch with my friends on gluten-free avocado toast and go to lunch and get like rice and chicken and all of these things and have like a steak and potato for dinner sort of a deal. So it feels like freedom to me, but for like 85% of my patients, it may not feel like freedom for. And so
No, like, oh my God. And oh no, like I love, like the culture I come from, like we're known for our like baked goods, like breads and baked pastry. You're like, I love that. It's so delicious and so not nutritious, I guess, but just yummy, just like endorphin. It's like when I eat a really good bread or a really good pastry, like I'm like, oh, it's like hallelujah. I hear angels singing. It's so much fun. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so there's also the energetic aspect of like, if I'm having so much fun doing it, maybe it's okay to do it every once in a while. Also, gluten-free bread is usually it's made out of not so good ingredients. It's not that healthy for you. And I actually sometimes feel worse after eating gluten-free bread, even the fancy brands at Whole Foods. They don't make me feel that good.
I think that that's such good, like just noticing of the body because I agree. Like when you think of there shouldn't be something an issue with a naturally sourced thing. I think it has a lot to do with like associations our systems make based off what it's paired with. Most likely in America, not as much other countries. And so if we eat like the pure sort of like brands or the pure versions of it, there must be way there. I mean, there are way less issues like that could arise from it. And I agree. It is so about experience and cooking has, every emotion you can imagine tied with it, memories, and those are beautiful. And I feel like I mean, I have so many patients that love making sourdough bread and they're like, I don't want to give this up. And I'm like, you don't have to. Like, that's not something that has to impact health. Like, we can work with health in so many different ways. We don't have to walk down such a narrow road. Like, we can grow as we go. And if that ever sounded interesting, then we can try it. But it doesn't have to be something that is like a mandate ever, ever.
And is there a difference between having huge amounts of gluten to having small amounts as far as how it impacts the body?
That's a great question. So I would say yes, absolutely. But For someone like me who's highly sensitive, I would still feel it even if it was in small amounts. Like my throat locks up, all kinds of things. But I feel like for somebody who has like a very neutral relationship with gluten or dairy, they can eat it and receive those benefits. They can receive the nutrition in that food because their body is accepting it. It's not seeing it as like a subconscious, unconscious threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess belief systems has a lot to do with it because like some people say that you can even like inject a poison into your body, but if you clear it and you think of it as not being a poison, it can even heal you.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not at that level yet.
Me either. I would be terrified to inject a poison into my body.
But I will eat some challah bread and some pastries every once in a while. I do actually feel better when I don't completely, but I think life is a game, and life is like we have such short time on this planet, and we do need to enjoy our time as much as possible. And as like you said, as long as it doesn't really hurt you, and indulging every once in a while is not bad.
And just knowing, like,
Well, sometimes people, when people feel so deprived and restricted, unlike you, where you find freedom in not having gluten, people like me who find it to be very restrictive and like a deprivation. I think this is a health hazard too, because our emotions affect our body.
100%. And I think that that's where like the beauty of like that awareness is so powerful. I always think of things as like, and the thing is too, is I have had gluten and dairy, and sometimes I am honestly not affected by it, and other times it hits so hard. And usually there's an effect enough to where I feel like it feels like freedom to just like take it off the table for the most part, to bring my system into a level of stability. But there are foods that are gray areas that I have all of the time that are definitely have that, in moderation. I feel fine when I eat it, but if I'm overindulging, I can notice that shift in my system. Like it's almost like poking holes in my structural stability. So I think kind of like so much of this this call, it's like just using your intuition and knowing yourself, and knowing that you actually do know yourself, and it's safe to take action based on that knowing of yourself and that awareness. It's key.
Amazing. What are your three top tips to living a stellar life?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. Okay, so I would say connection to self, and that choice to be in the present moment. And then truly the last thing would be being open to letting go of what doesn't work and growing and developing what does. And from that space, you can stay so focused on the process and so enchanted by who you experience yourself as along the way. Those would be my top three.
Thank you, love. And where can people find you?
Thank you for asking. So just drbrookestuart.com, and we have an Instagram at Dr. Brooke Stewart, and those would be the two main ways.
Beautiful. And people can connect with you via Zoom as well, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, Dr. Brooke, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was awesome seeing you again and having this amazing conversation with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Orion, for doing the work that you do and for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember to connect to self, be present, let go of what does not serve you, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.